Welcome to NFL Talk. It seems like everyone's talking about the Ravens wide receiver situation, and I have to admit, it got me scratching my head a bit too. You bring in a talent like Diontae Johnson, a guy who's consistently put up numbers elsewhere, and then you can't seem to find a place for him in the offense. What's the deal here?
It's a fascinating puzzle. It really gets to the heart of how NFL teams balance talent acquisition with coaching and ultimately winning games. On the surface, the Ravens made a savvy move. They saw an opportunity to grab a proven receiver, and they went for it. But then you have the reality of their offensive system and the question of whether Johnson truly fits into that puzzle.
Right, and we can't just ignore the fact that they already had a promising young receiver in Rashad Bateman. So is this a case of the front office falling in love with talent without considering the fit? Or did they genuinely believe they could create a system that would utilize both players effectively?
I think it's more nuanced than simply saying they didn't consider the fit. Let's look at the offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. He's known for his creativity and adaptability. He's shown in the past that he's willing to adjust his schemes to maximize the talent he has. So the question becomes, is there something specific about Johnson's skill set that isn't meshing with what Monken wants to?
And that's where things get really interesting because on paper, Johnson seems like he'd be a great fit for any offense. He's a reliable route runner. He's got good hands, and he's shown the ability to make big plays. So what's the missing piece here?
Well, we have to factor in the Lamar Jackson element. Jackson is a unique quarterback with a very specific set of strengths. He excels at making plays outside of the pocket, using his legs to extend plays, and throwing on the run. Now, those are great attributes, but they also dictate the types of receivers who thrive in that system.
So you're saying that maybe a receiver who excels at precise route running and creating separation in tight spaces might not be the ideal fit for a quarterback who's constantly improvising
Right.
and extending plays.
Exactly. You need receivers who can adjust their routes on the fly, who can find open space when the play breaks down, and who are comfortable catching passes in unconventional situations.
Which brings us back to Bateman. He seems to have a knack for that kind of improvisation. He's shown an ability to find the soft spots in coverage and make himself available to Jackson, even when the play isn't going according to plan.
And that chemistry between quarterback and receiver is crucial in any offense, but especially in a system like Baltimore, where so much of the passing game relies on instinct and improvisation.
So maybe the Ravens aren't necessarily misusing Johnson, but rather they're prioritizing the chemistry and fit they already have with Bateman and Jackson.
That's a very real possibility. It's not that Johnson is a bad receiver. It's more about finding the right pieces that complement each other and fit within the larger offense scheme.
It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes you have to adjust the shape of the hole or find a different peg.
Precisely. It's about maximizing the potential of the entire unit, not just individual players.
And that takes us to the recent game against the Steelers, where Johnson only saw 2 targets, while Bateman had a standout performance. Is that just a coincidence? Or is it a sign of the coaching staff's thinking?
It's hard to say for sure based on one game, but it's certainly telling that they lean so heavily on Bateman in a crucial divisional matchup.
It almost feels like they're sending a message to Johnson. Either adapt to our system or we'll go with the player who already knows the playbook.
That's a bit of a harsh interpretation, but there's no denying that the situation is creating some tension and uncertainty in the team.
And that tension could potentially derail their season, especially if it leads to locker room division or a lack of trust in the coaching staff.
Absolutely. The Ravens have Super Bowl aspirations, but they need to find a way to resolve this situation quickly and decisively.
Because the longer it lingers, the more it could impact their chemistry and their chances of reaching their full potential.
And that's the real risk here. They have a talented roster, but if they can't find a way to utilize their weapons effectively, those Super Bowl dreams could quickly fade away. It's a classic case of the win-now mentality, clashing with long-term planning. The Ravens are in a position to compete for a championship right now, so it's understandable that they're prioritizing players who they feel give them the best chance to win today. But at what cost?
That's the million-dollar question. Are they sacrificing Johnson's development and potentially alienating a valuable asset in the pursuit of immediate success? And if so, is that a sustainable approach?
It's a gamble for sure. You're betting that the short-term gains outweigh the potential long-term consequences. And in this case, the consequences could be significant.
We're talking about a player who's proven himself at the NFL level, who's shown he can be a difference maker in an offense. If the Ravens don't find a way to utilize him effectively, they risk damaging his confidence and hindering his growth.
And that could come back to haunt them down the road. Let's say Bateman gets in, or his production did. Suddenly you're looking at Johnson and wondering why he's not stepping up. But the reality might be that you spent so much time sidelining him, that he's lost his rhythm and his belief in himself.
It's like a garden. You can't just plant a seed and expect it to flourish without nurturing it. You have to give it sunlight, water, and attention. If you neglect it, it'll wither and die.
And the same goes for players. They need opportunities to play, to make mistakes, to learn and to grow. If you deny them those opportunities, you're essentially stunting their development.
So what's the solution here? Do the Ravens need to make a drastic change to their offense to accommodate Johnson? Or is there a more subtle way to integrate him without disrupting their existing chemistry?
I think the key is finding a balance. They don't need to completely overhaul their system, but they do need to be more creative in finding ways to get Johnson involved. Maybe that means designing specific plays that cater to his strengths. Maybe it means giving him more reps in practice. Or maybe it simply means having a conversation with him and reassuring him that he's still a valued part of the team.
Because at the end of the day, it's about communication and trust. If the players feel like the coaching staff has a plan and that they're all working towards the same goal, they can go a long way in overcoming any obstacle.
Absolutely. And that's where leadership comes in. The Ravens need their coaches and their veterans to step up and create an environment where everyone feels valued and everyone is pulling in the same direction.
Because if they can't do that, this seemingly minor personnel issue could snowball into something much bigger. It could create a rift in the locker room. It could undermine their confidence, and it could ultimately derail their season.
And that would be a shame, because this Ravens team has the potential to be something special. They have talent, they have experience, and they have a hunger to win. But they need to figure out this Johnson situation before it's too late.
Because in the NFL, the margin for error is slim and the competition fierce. You can't afford to let internal distractions derail your focus, especially when you have Super Bowl aspiration.
It's a reminder that even in a sport as physical as football, the mental game is just as important. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have the right mindset, if you don't have that belief and that unity, it's all for nothing.
And that's what makes this Ravens situation so intriguing.
Yeah.
It's a microcosm of the challenges that every team faces, finding the right balance between individual talent and team chemistry, between short-term goals and long-term vision.
It's like a chess game. You have to think several moves ahead, you have to anticipate your opponent's reactions, and you have to be willing to sacrifice a pawn to protect your king.
And in this case, the Ravens' king is their Super Bowl aspiration. To reach that ultimate goal, they need to make sure all their pieces are aligned and all their players are bought into the game plan.
It's going to be fascinating to see how they handle this Johnson situation moving forward. Will they make the necessary adjustments to unlock his potential, or will they double down on their current approach and risk alienating a valuable asset?
The clock is ticking, and the pressure is mounting. The Ravens have a lot riding on this season, and the decisions they make in the coming weeks could determine their fate.
Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this Ravens saga is a must-watch storyline for any NFL fan.
Goodbye, and see you in the next video.